All right. And so, Tiffany, yeah, just thought I would love to pass it off to you for a quick introduction on the project before we begin.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Tiffany Spear with the City of Lakewood. As some of you for sure know, and maybe others are maybe tangentially aware, the City of Lakewood is embarking on a almost 2-year process now to take a comprehensive review of what it's called the comprehensive plan for the city. State law requires that this review happen periodically, and once we do this in 2024, which is the due date, the next time this would happen is 10 years later, but there will be a 5-year kind of check-in that state law now requires to just show progress on what's happened based on what was adopted for 2024. Lakewood incorporated in 1996, so we're about a 26-year-old city. But the periodic review is what I'll be calling this, has happened a couple of times. Last time was in 2015. But since then, obviously, a lot has changed. Just with both state law changes and then the COVID pandemic and a lot of other economic and social changes that have happened in the last now 8 years, all of which needs to be reflected in the comprehensive plan. So quickly, what is a comprehensive plan? It is the foundational document for the government to use and refer to set policies and objectives for a number of different areas. Uh, Land use first and foremost, kind of to show where different types of uses and activities happen in different parts of the city, but also looking at everything from public safety, parks activities, uh, the partnerships that the city has with various agencies, all sorts of things. It runs the gamut. And all of those things are up for review as part of this process. So each of you has a particular expertise and experience that we are very happy to have you bring to the table here. You are the foundation of our steering committee. And while we'll be talking about focusing on particular topics over time, I just want to thank you again for everything that you're going to be providing to the city as assistance for this process. We're in this planning early stages. Eventually, what happens is recommendations will be drafted that the general public, as well as yourselves, will have plenty of time to review and comment on. And then this will go through our planning commission at the city and then the city council for further public discussion and hearings. And then by the end of next year, the city council will be taking official action to say, this is our new version of our comprehensive plan. Um, as mentioned on the agenda today, climate change is one of the big ones that the city has taken some action on, but is now looking to update. One of the other big major focuses for this whole process will be housing and planning for future growth. But again, there's a wide range of things that the city will be talking about over the next year, year and a half. So Ben, I don't know if there's anything else you needed covered, but that's my high level intro.
No, that's great. Thank you, Tiffany. And just want to add to that, we'll be reporting out a little bit on what our engagement process will look like for next 2 months. First of all, acknowledge that not everyone we've reached out to is able to attend today. Finding a time for all of us was harder than herding cats, and so we'll be following up with folks individually as well, on top of other processes. And so, as Tiffany mentioned, this is a 2-year project, but a lot of we do have this big sprint through June of 2023 to talk about specifically climate change and housing within the city of Lakewood as well, and recognizing that the intersectionality of all these various topics, even though a comprehensive plan, we like to silo everything. The truth, as we all know, the truth of the matter is all these topics go hand in hand. And so this steering committee is really just one of many ways that we hope to have conversations with folks within the city of Lakewood. I also want to acknowledge that we have oh, sorry, just a little bit echo on my end, neighborhood planning process in Telecom area as well. Um, and just kind of, as I mentioned, the steering committee will ideally meet once a month through the month of June. And so today we're kicking off the committee, just kind of setting the stage for what's to come. In March, we're hoping to host a workshop with you all and other folks on reviewing the energy and climate change chapter, but also advising us as well, us as in the City of Lakewood and Berg Consulting, on thinking through how do we make sure that we're talking to the right folks and being able to dive deeper into the conversation. And so, which then we hope to then implement the recommendations that you all have for us in terms of how do we best have further conversations. Leading us to April, we'll be reporting out to this committee as an advisory group, but also as an accountability group as well to review what we've learned from our additional outreach that we've done and then ask for additional feedback on the implementation plan recommendations. And finally, towards May, we hope to present a draft recommendations from our conversations and identify next steps to ensure that we are following up and following through our conversations in June and for the rest of this periodic review as well by end of 2024. I'll just pause here real quick just to see if there's any clarifying questions on the process.
I have one.
Yes.
With the reporting opportunity, is that reporting to the city council?
We will be, so essentially this is a group that we're hoping to go a little bit deeper with the conversation. So we'll be reporting to you all. And so I think the advantage of like Andrew, Maddie, and myself facilitating this conversation is that the city is actually able to participate in the conversation with you all on the recommendations. We will be presenting to different commissions and working with Tiffany on navigating the political process of it as well. But I'm really hoping that this group can help like being able to dive deeper into these recommendations around climate change and housing, but also sort of set the stage in terms of finding recommendations to the city, to Lakewood around how can we have more meaningful conversations and set a good example and some good takeaways for moving forward as well for long-term conversations and engagement. So it's no short order. There's a lot that we're trying to accomplish, and we welcome any feedback. And there's a lot of moving pieces, but our hope is that we can just sort of be a guide through this process.
And if I could, I think to piggyback on Ben's answer, there will be opportunity for you, either as a group if you wish to, or as individuals to make reports to, for instance, the Planning Commission and eventually the City Council. Absolutely. What we want to try to make sure we're doing from the get-go is engage different interest groups, different subject matter experts from our community. So this isn't something that the city is developing as a governmental body without really reflecting what the city residents and businesses want and need. So absolutely, you'll be able to provide your feedback to people on both the commission and the council. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. With that, I will pass it off to Maddie for the report out on engagement.
Okay, thanks, Ben. So we had the great opportunity to talk to most or all of you, as well as some other organizations to really get a landscape view of the engagement work that the City of Lakewood has done in the past, opportunities for engagement, so that we're not only thinking about these elements of the comprehensive plan, but how can the city and Burt Consulting and you all really facilitate a wider engagement beyond the steering committee and also for other projects in the future. So this is a summary of what we heard from those interviews. There was a lot of positive feedback saying that the City of Lakewood hosts fun events and makes sure to invite organizations to participate and to table. The city also has offered financial support and partnership so that new organizations can get up and running, and noting that the city in general is really supportive of like new ideas and innovative approaches. And Lakewood is really seen as a place where public participation is valued. There are, of course, some improvement opportunities, including doing some more intentional outreach to communities of color and making sure that that outreach is consistent. Engaging community members with the most needs, knowing that, you know, when you hold a public meeting, there might be folks that show up consistently, and then there's so many people that aren't in the room, who may not have the childcare or the resources to get to that meeting. So wanting to make sure that the city is doing that intentional outreach to folks with the most needs. Providing consistent support and uplifting community participation and decision making, that, you know, this group is here to be making recommendations, but also to be inviting others into the space and really expanding on engagement opportunities. And lastly, that there's some unique opportunities that the city can take advantage of in the future, including working with employers and making sure that they're connecting to the military base, JBLM, which Tiffany has really strong connections to. So that was acknowledged by one of our interviewees that, you know, while the city of Lakewood has done a great job up until this point of engaging the community, that there's always kind of an innovative approach that you can, you know, improve on as we move forward in this long process.
Just want to also just pause, just acknowledge that there's a new person who joined with, I believe, by phone. If you could just introduce yourself real quick for us, that would be great. Can't see the full. However, his phone number ends in 3131. If you could just introduce yourself real quick. All right. Can you hear us? Or is that one of us by chance? Just wanted just to make sure that you had a chance to respond. Okay. Sorry, Maddie. Just wanted just to kind of acknowledge that, just to kind of move. Okay. Well, if you can hear me.
I appreciate knowing who's in the room.
All right. Maybe then we'll just continue, and then if the person on the phone, if they are able to respond later, feel free to jump in with introduction. That'll be great.
Yeah, thanks.
So this is Jan from LASA, and I don't know if it's me. I know that my phone got disconnected and I rejoined, but my phone number is not 31, whatever you just said.
Oh, okay.
But it's possibly me because of okay.
All right, thank
phone
you.
issues. Thanks.
Thanks, Jan. Okay, so that was generally what we heard from the interviews that we've done so far. And what are our action steps from that information? So first, we really want to establish this steering committee as a lead in establishing engagement strategies and planning policy design around climate and housing. And if you're thinking to yourself, I'm not a climate expert, that is kind of the point. We really think that climate is intersectional with transportation issues, with housing, with homelessness, so many of the issues that you all are really connected to in the city of Lakewood. And like Ben and Tiffany have both said, this is not the last engagement opportunity for community members. In fact, we are really going to be looking to you all and asking you, how can we engage the wider city of Lakewood on issues around climate and housing? So two, we also want to make some recommendations to the city on best practices for ensuring long-term engagement on city projects and the comprehensive plan. So maybe it's reflecting on how the steering committee goes, thinking about cultural liaisons and other kind of approaches to that long-term engagement. And then lastly, supporting a multi-pronged engagement processes, both in person and virtual, to ensure that lots of different folks are able to have their voices heard on this project. You all were in these interviews with us, so I just want to ask, do you have any reactions or reflections or questions?
I'll start if no one is.
Yeah.
For all the different city places I've been involved, and including the Chamber of Commerce, I've always said it's awesome to be involved enough to answer the general people's questions when they wonder what's going on with sidewalks and roundabouts and public works. And I didn't understand the full scope of this when I was invited. I mean, I don't now, I'm sure, but it is exciting to hear that there is a such thing as this commission, and that looking into the forward steering of all these issues is a big deal. I, as a citizen, quite often have even answered on Facebook groups and things for all of these people that have everything to say, but never attend anything or read anything in the Suburban Times or read the city manager's report, one of my favorite things we do. And this kind of information and a better ability to share it with people so they can get ahead of it and maybe at least be scolded for paying no attention until they're mad. I think communication. The city's young, and I think we can grow up together still, and it'd be great. This sounds exciting.
Thanks, Todd, for being here, and I for being able to join us this morning. For others, we got connected to Todd through talking with the Chamber of Commerce. So your name was suggested, so we haven't gotten the chance to talk one-on-one, but I'm so happy that you're able to be at this meeting and participate in the process going forward.
I just want to say that I think it's great that there's acknowledgement that most people are not reading the city manager's report or attending those meetings because life, right? And that's not the life that most people are paying attention to. So being intentional about how to engage all of those populations and to get that information out as much as possible, I think is very admirable that the city is doing this. I was reading the report and reflecting that, it's a majority minority city. And yet, not necessarily the elected officials or the commissions represent that. And so that, it really is going to take that intentionality and those partnerships to really engage everyone and all of the groups in the community. So just really want to commend the city on getting us all together to be a part of that.
Thanks, Latasha. And the report that you were referring to, is that the climate perception?
The one you sent out, correct. The one you sent
Yeah.
out. And I thought it was really well done. You guys engaged some wonderful students I could see to do it. And really good information for me and as kind of not a starting place, but I don't know, a beginning place as we have these conversations. So appreciated being able to read through that.
Yeah, thanks for taking a look. And for others that haven't gotten the chance to, it's the climate change perception survey was done by some of my old colleagues at the Evans School for Public Policy. So the city of Lakewood worked directly with them to engage community members on, how they're thinking about climate change. And I think it's a really great basis for the start of our work that we'll be doing in the steering committee. There's also the energy and climate change chapter that I linked to. We're going to be talking about that a lot more going forward and really starting now. So I wanted to pass it back over to Ben.
Yeah, and I'll just add before I transition that, we are looking to you all to help advise on engagement, but my hope is that's a conversation that we can have together in terms of are we reaching the right folks? How can we make sure? I always like to use this metaphor of going to the supermarket. What do you need to go to the supermarket? Do some people just need a ride to the market? Other folks need a shirt and some socks because the market has a no shirt, no service policy. Sometimes it's just a little bit of borrow some cash. Maybe it's a little bit of gas for their car. And so there's different needs that people have to get to the finish line. And so that's sort of the analogy that I'm hoping to use for this process as well. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have some set asides to support just some capacity building to support community organizations to help with this outreach process as well, giving folks opportunity to help lead the conversation so that the power isn't all on us as consultants or with the city of Lakewood, and that we are able to share some of that, being able to have different directions of conversation. And we'll be continuing this conversation next month as well. All right, energy and climate change chapter. So I didn't want to get too into the weeds of the chapter yet. That's kind of acknowledge sort of the key buckets of work that we'll be tackling in terms of conversation wise. And so the first is thinking about leadership and managing climate change. And so really making recommendations to the city of Lakewood around good governance, engagement around and education around climate change. The next, relatively self-explanatory, but around transportation planning. And so working with Sound Transit, Pierce Transit, thinking about where sidewalks, bike facilities are needed to have a multimodal system within the city of Lakewood. The third around sustainable and energy efficient systems. So I'm looking to all the utility folks in the room. This is where your chance to really kind of help weigh in, but also how we can partner. I think there's a great nexus to be made here with the next one around sustainable development and housing specifically. And so I think there's a great conversation we had on how public infrastructure is a critical part of housing affordability as well. And lastly, hazards mitigation plans, thinking about responding to to severe weather events as they become more frequent over the next few years. Well, for the foreseeable future as well. And so within each of these chapters, there are a significant number of action items associated with each one. At our next meeting, we will be sharing materials in advance, but really spending a good chunk of time reviewing those items together. Just acknowledging some of the challenges of this work. There's a lot to look at, and so prioritizing what an implementation strategy looks like is going to be our main charge. I also acknowledge the plan is a little bit difficult to read, and so being able to take out the information and thinking about how can we make the plan more more agile in terms of being able to update the plan on a more regular basis, something maybe so that we don't have to wait 8 years for a next product review, and how do we continue to pivot and respond as needed, just knowing that to have some more agility in that aspect. And so with that, I thought, oh, okay, sorry. I forgot the slide order. I was not expecting that. As I mentioned earlier, in March, we will have a deeper sort of study analysis together around the goals, policies, and action items associated with the energy and climate change chapter. But also trying to think through, now that we've had an initial start around what our priorities kind of look like, what's our key messaging, and taking that out to the public to have further conversations. What events should we attend? Who else should we talk to? Is this something that you can support us with? How can we support you to help have this conversation happen? So it'll definitely be a pretty interesting work session, I believe. And we'll do the work and coming back to you all in April to review the feedback that we've heard and start thinking on making recommendations for the city of Lakewood in May, and continue the conversation June onwards in terms of best next steps.
And
I hate
Ben,
carrying my. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, Ben. Could you go back one slide, please?
Yes.
So one more forward. There we go. So I just wanted to make the point that the energy and climate change chapter was adopted in 21, and then in 2022 there was additional discussion about how to start to implement it. And so this discussion that now we're having with you is very timely. But one of the key purposes and focuses for the chapter is to say we are past the point of trying to avoid all climate change effects. Things are going to happen, things are going to change within the city of Lakewood as well as other areas because of climate change that has already started to occur. So it's not just how do we stop X, Y, or Z, it's how do we prepare for things that we know now are going to happen. And the city is very much hoping to figure out how to best address what it needs to do to prepare for those changes and then avoid accelerating those changes, try to make it as minimal as possible over time with the help of homeowners, renters, businesses, and agencies and utilities that the city partners with all the time. This is not something where we're trying to come up with something where City of Lakewood does all of this somehow in a magic world as the city. It's partnerships are essential. So part of what we're doing here with you is to get your feedback on not only who to talk to, but also your ideas of what are realistic things that businesses, residents, and agencies can be doing in partnership with the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Tiffany. All right. I was about to say I hate it when the moderator speaks too much. So I am actually going to shift the tables and would love to ask you all just kind of to weigh in on feedback. And so typically for a group this size, what I enjoy doing is a circle facilitation, giving everyone a chance to speak. And so in the chat, I've kind of put a speaking order of the circle of how folks can talk in order. Andrew, I've added you as well as one of the overall PMs for this project. Since Maddie and I are facilitating, we're gonna excuse ourselves conversation, but we'll do 2 rounds of conversations, and then with the remainder time left, we'll do some follow-up conversation. And so the prompts that I have for this group are two things. What stands out to you as a priority or focus as we move forward? And what information would you need from Burke and the city of Lakewood to help understand how this plan can be successful? I'm gonna just kind of, I'll give a minute or two before we start, but I'm not gonna track time, but I'm gonna like suggest, like ask that folks keep like their responses within a minute or two, but feel free to take less or more time as needed. If you don't have an answer right now when we get to you, there's no worry at all. We can always circle back to you after we go through the list. And then after everyone has had a chance to talk, we'll go back down the same order again so that folks can respond or add more in response to what they've heard or other epiphanies that they may have had throughout this process. And so the benefit of this, what I like about this facilitation technique is that it allows everyone a chance to speak, but also gives everyone a chance to listen to each other as well. And so after we do 2 rounds, first one being about a minute or two, more or less, and then second one a little bit shorter. We'll have a little bit more discussion and we'll talk next steps. And so, yeah, I'm gonna just kind of give it a couple more seconds for y'all to marinate on the questions, and then Amy, I'll go to you to go first whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just get in the deep end of the pool.
Let's do it.
We are really excited to be working with the cities and the counties on the periodic update for the next number of years. Like everybody, we're going to be heavily engaged on issues, the transportation electrification. What kind of projects
yes.
is Puget going to be working on to make sure that those goals can be met? Like Latasha and others, the electric and gas utilities are heavily engaged in, all of the state compliance with CETA. And again, we've got our long range planning, so we want to make sure what we're working on will kind of be, work with the city of Lakewood's vision too, as we work towards 2045, what we call our beyond net zero. So, I just jotted down a couple of things that we kind of are bringing forth when we talk to jurisdictions about when they're scoping for an EIS. Yeah, the transportation electrification, grid modernization. Again, there's a lot of capital projects. So the project part, distributive energy through battery storage, solar, and then certainly EV deployment and your EV strategy for the city. And a lot of that sounds like some long range planning, but it's also going to have that regulatory aspect. And I don't know about TPU, but at Puget, we know that we're going to be building more projects to meet the electrical load that's really going to be expected over the next number of years for continued electrification. As we phase out fossil fuels, then we build in another fuel. So that's kind of what I thought about. And again, what we can help to put into the Lakewood plan that will help you meet your vision. And again, kind of lockstep with what we're doing too under CETA. And again, the Climate Commitment Act, all those kind of things. So I don't know if that answered anything, Ben, but it's kind of what I thought of initially out of the gate.
No, I love that. Thank you, Amy.
I will just jump in before Jan starts. Amy, expert in climate, obviously as a utility company, very connected to this work. I would say if you have a reaction to the energy and climate change chapter, or thinking about how your work may intersect with climate change, feel free to just share your initial thoughts here. Like I said, you don't need to be a climate expert for your opinions and your insight to really be helpful to this process. And with that, I will kick it over to Jan. Thanks again, Amy.
I guess, Jan, are you there
Hi.
by chance? Oh.
Hi, this is Mandy Ma from Multicultural Self-Sufficiency Movement. Yeah, I heard what you guys are saying, and then of course community leaders could be represent the community opinion. But do you have any thought about participating community members for like a survey? What could they think about the priority? For example, you guys said some of the items, and then we could make a simple survey to each community. Then we would know how we could really communicate it from community needs too. So what you're saying is many items I heard is I've been involved with state level, county level, but this time Lakewood is bringing up the issue. But really, Lakewood, I'm representing minority. We serve Korean, also former Soviet Union, East European, or some Hispanic, and Southeast Asian in the Lakewood, but general. So if we could generate less than 10 questions a survey about the priority issue, then we could let the community what really city is concerning. Also, at the same time, we would find it out what community is really put the priority of the subject, because many of the issue community members might not or never thought about it. It could be just the issue on the news on the TV. So that's my question.
Yeah.
If you guys, if we or you guys generate the question, I don't mind to help you guys to translate and then put out the question to the community. Like Pierce County government, they every year or every other year, this year they send it out again. But if City of Lakewood do that, then at least the minority people always think city is separated from our community. That is different.
Yeah.
But about 10, 15 years ago, MSM usually do the the survey to the community and then brought that result to the city. So this kind of issue, if you are doing every 5 years or whatever, is important. At least to just the subject and then priority issue, what my members are thinking. And then what that's the part of outreach as well as marketing. That's you guys invited me as a minority community, but those things important. That's my question. Can we generate the question survey, simple and easy?
Yeah.
Then we could do the survey maybe 2 weeks. Then we can get the survey record or the sample from the community, and then upon that also we can drive community what is the city important to priority.
Yeah.
First, yeah. From there we can discuss so many issues. Doesn't how we could focus. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my question. Yeah.
Well, Manny, it's so great. I'm glad you're able to join us today. Let's see. I feel like I'm gonna miss something, so I'm just gonna respond to what stood out to me. And so, yes, of course, like we can definitely do a survey, and our hope is that we are able to work in leading a lot of engagement with diverse communities within the city of Lakewood. And I definitely would love to seek advice from you on how to make sure that we're doing a great job. And so I do like the idea of the survey, and I agree. I think climate change can feel like such like a very distant from the reality of our day-to-day lives sometimes. But I think that's kind of the thing that comes up too, is like, what's that messaging that we're creating around why climate change is important? Like for me, I always think about how like affordable housing is a climate change issue, because where you live, having access to being close to your job or living where you want to live for access to opportunities that you want is so critical, right? And so it's like, how do we create that messaging? How do we sort of identify make that nexus of how like climate change and social justice and comprehensive planning go hand in hand? And so just to start off, like I just find myself like nodding to everything that you're saying, Mandy. And this is an ongoing conversation would love to have with you, and would love to hear from you and the people that you serve and work with in terms of what stands out as a like help tell us like what our priorities should be for this process. Andrew and Maddie or Tiffany, I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, Mandy, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us. It's so great to hear your voice. I captured what your suggestion about a survey, and our next meeting together is going to be 2 hours where we're going to dive deep into engagement strategies. So we'll get to that in the next steps, but I really hope that you and everyone on this call will be able to make that meeting, because that is really where we're going to dive into what strategies can we use to engage others in this process. So thanks for getting us started on that conversation.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I'm
Jan, do you want to jump
Yes.
in and
So I'm very excited about this whole thing because I've been real interested in climate change and how it impacts social justice for a while. And one of the things I thought we were somewhat visionary by trying to pull together a multi-purpose room that could then double as both education for the community, which is going to need to happen, and as a warm and cooling center. The bad news is that we didn't have enough funding to make that happen. So it is on the back burner of something that we're going to try to achieve in the future. And meanwhile, when I say that not only would we want to use that for the cooling and the warming center, but I think that to have a place to go for education is important. And what I'm talking about with education is that I was not aware of something that is called whiplash. And that is where, for anyone who's not aware of it, is where you go from 100 degrees to 20 degrees in one day. And I'm exaggerating to make my point. And quite frankly, if that happens to me, that's inconvenient, because I can go change my clothes and I can go turn on the heat or the air conditioner. If you're living on the street and you think, oh, spring is finally here and all your clothes are stinky and you throw them away, and then the next day it's freezing weather, that's going to be potentially a deadly impact on you. So I think that even people on the street who can probably teach me a heck of a lot are going to need to learn a few things as well, just for the sake of survival. And then I am busy redoing my garden, and last year I did all these plantings, went away for 3 days, and I lost everything. And I lost it because it was the 1 3-day period of heat. And here I am, educated person with resources, and I lost things because Washington State decided to become Arizona for a couple of days. And what I'm getting at with that is that I think that it might be good to educate the whole community that as we do plantings, what type of plantings should we do? Not just so that our gardens look pretty, but so that we improve our environment. And then I'm also interested in social justice and somebody who's living in a concrete jungle, and that their little unit gets up to be 1,000 degrees overnight, and trying to figure out, the city, bless them, opened up some warm and cooling centers, but my thought is I think that they closed them at 5 o'clock. We can't put everything on the shoulder of the city. Maybe we need to have some volunteer power who's going to be able to say, I will take this shift and I'll take that shift, because you can't close your cooling center at 5 o'clock, which is the hottest part of the day. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of interest. One of the interests, self-serving for LASA, is to get that multi-purpose room up and running. And then in general, I think education of everybody as to how it might impact us and what can we do about it, little things that we might be able to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Andrew, just any reflections?
I mean, I'm pretty interested in what the other folks on the call have to say, so I'm not going to talk for too long. But what I would kind of reinforce with all of this is that this is part of a broader comprehensive plan process, and what we're talking about here with respect to climate should be influencing everything. And Ben's talked about this, but you can't silo certain issues. If we're talking about climate change and climate change planning, it has to include economic development and housing and transportation and parks and all of that together. So it's just something to keep in mind as we're going forward.
Thanks, Andrew. Todd.
Hello, I'm Todd. What I'm hearing so far, and I think I already said one thing I'm excited about, is just getting all the community links that I know about integrated into this discussion. I'm also fascinated by the not siloing these different issues because they're so interlinked if we make them be so. And I have, and I guess, I don't know, diverse or whatever interesting background to come to these things, because of course I'm here because of business, and I'm pro-business as far as it deals with our industry affected by purchasing from China and from the rest of the world and from New York and doing business in town. And yet I've been an environmentalist since I was a kid, and I would sure like all of our world's resources to go to the dirtiest places, but then here we are meeting about what's in Lakewood. And so I'm really interested that the topic here is partially to the reaction to the changes that are forthcoming, whether we can do anything about them or not, but keeping in mind that maybe that affects how we handle stormwater and things that'll change in drainage systems because of climate change and weather for the homeless and all of that. So business-wise, I know a lot about the challenges of getting local businesses to not think about their business for a minute and think even local regional. It's even hard for us to get out of our minds on our block and think about this town, let alone the state and the country. But coming up with a communication process to make all that happen is something I'm kind of maybe the most interested in being a cog in, because I'm not the scientist who's going to tell you anything, but social scientist a bit, because all the organizations I'm in have trouble communicating and interfacing with the groups, organizations, and business people. And the more we, like in business, the example I make a lot is we want to do business with people who do business with people who do business with us, and complete that chain. And that applies to this for the communication between local weekend warriors who are concerned about the city for 1 hour a month, and people that are involved, and making people feel like they are empowered by having a link. I see this diverse group as we have people from like the International District, and we're incredibly racially diverse in our 51% now. I think the latest statistics, 51% minority community. We kind of look like a group of envoys already that should be able to communicate with groups as each of us your local liaison, so that an invitation to engage can come from a face and a name and a title that makes sense to the group we hit. So that's what I hope to see in my 1 minute.
Thanks, Todd. We'll go Latasha, Rachel, and then Jesse, and then
I'm gonna go just very quickly because I know that there's only 5 minutes left, and I will just say, from my perspective, I think electrification and all that's happening with electrification is very important, and that it has to do with literally everything that we're doing, whether it's building. I know that there's, we're planning right now for the comprehensive plan for the downtown corridor in particular, as we're building housing, making sure that the infrastructure is available for electric vehicles. And I think it all comes down to, honestly, just this one thing. And I think that's partnerships. The city can't do it alone. And no organization can do it alone. We all have to be working together kind of towards the same goal. So really identifying what those goals are and then finding the partners to work together. And if you do that, then the community will come along, because those partners ideally should be from each part of the community. And I'll stop there and let other people talk.
Thanks. Thank you, Latasha. Rachel.
A second to catch up. I was looking back at the household income in the larger climate report that you guys sent out, and it stood out to me that the majority of the folks who filled out that survey were at or below 80% of the area median income, which is where a lot of the social service programs stop. So you have a lot of low, very low, extremely low income folks, at least that responded to the survey. And so the thing that I think about in a lot of this, and I've heard it a little bit about, like, how does the average person care about things like this? But just a reminder that the decisions that we might make and how this plan goes forward is going to compound for the folks who are the most vulnerable. And so while there might be solutions that work for for other people at other income levels or whatever, we have the ability right now to really keep the folks in mind who might not otherwise have a voice. So
Thanks, Rachel.
Can I just add one thing to what Rachel said? Because I was going to say this in my remarks, but I cut it short, is that we, as we're doing this, really thinking about resources, right? And how we're distributing those resources. And when we're talking about doing things equitably, it's not doing things equally. And people need to understand that there's a difference, right? And so really focusing on the population that is going to be most hard hit, and how we can really provide those resources. So I just wanted to add that, Rachel, because I 100% agree with you.
yeah, because if you have someone who is making $1,200 a month and is having a hard time paying their power bill as it is, when you start talking to them about converting their heat system to an electric system, they don't like, there's no money in the cost that can compound on top of that to make that happen. Is pretty overwhelming. And so those are the sorts of things we have the ability to pay attention to right now.
Thank you. Jesse.
So I'm kind of happy I went later because I want to build on a couple things that I heard during the conversation. One is educating the public. I think that is paramount and something that we need to do first, because all the work that we do, if we're not actually engaging the public, it's only our opinions. So I think the outreach and the education of the public is most important and paramount, and that's what I'm excited about. That's what I do basically, is engage the community. So I'm looking forward to that in this work. So that's pretty much. And then the other thing, I'd love to see the intersection between improving energy and housing, and see how that's going to look and how we're going to come up with ideas on that. Whether we integrate solar panels into new construction or offer subsidies for people to include that. I think anything we can do would be a good thing. So I'll move on.
Thanks, Jesse. Tiffany, I'll let you have the last word of the meeting before we close out.
I will just say thank you to everyone. I am not the person that should be, I think, offering anything right now. I need to listen and hear and absorb. So going forward, we can make sure that we are taking all of your feedback and perspectives and incorporating that deeply into what we do. So I would just say thank you once again. I look forward to working with all of you as we talk not only climate change, but other topics over time. If there's ever anything that you need in between these meetings, please feel free to reach out to myself or the Burke contacts. I'm happy to do what I can whenever you need it. So thank you.
Awesome. I know we're at time, so I'll close out again by just saying thank you all so much. I am so thankful for all the feedback that we've heard so far, and I think this will make for a really meaningful, but also a very fun project as well. And so I'll just close out by saying we don't have time to send out a doodle poll, but we'll be sending something out to schedule our next meeting high towards end of March. I am going to offer an evening time if needed as well. If we do this in person, we'll provide food as needed, but we're going to throw a lot of different options out there. So definitely welcome whatever chance we can for a little bit of a longer meeting. So thank you all so much for our first meeting today. As Tiffany mentioned, feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. And in the chat, there was a request to send out a contact list. And so I'll share emails with this group with folks here as well, just as a follow-up. And so thank you again all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
It was great
Tiffany,
hanging out for an hour. See you next time.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Tiffany, if you get a minute, can you contact me? This is Jesse. You're muted.
Can you stop the recording, Maddie? And I need to talk to Jesse really quick.
Okay, I'm gonna leave the meeting and then I think it'll stop.
Okay. So
Hey.
really quickly, I had a question from a council discussion Monday night. They were talking about ARPA funding, including for Springbrook Connections and the funding to use the Centerforce building. They wanted to know who the fiscal agent is for Springbrook.
We are. We're our own 501c3.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Appreciate it. So what did you need from me?
That's kind of what I wanted to ask you about.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded like, based on Monday night's discussion by council, they are willing and interested in providing that support, but I just needed to get them the follow-up information. So I will do that, and I will keep you in the loop as to when they would be taking action on it.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.